he also said that the Sixers are better on paper than the Warriors were in 2016-17. I don't know that I can agree with that. I don't really think it works, but again.
And the whole thing quickly blew up into a massive league talking point. What Durant posted online did far more than just ignite a simple hoops debate. It completely restarted old beefs that people thought were settled years ago, pulling his former teammates and rival players right back into the fire. A casual online debate about hoops quickly spiraled into a massive league-wide controversy. This drama is forcing active players to speak out, protect their reputations, and even reopen some painful wounds that never quite healed. Keep watching, because you are about to find out exactly what Durant said, who he targeted, and how the huge response from across the league transformed this into one of the summer's absolute biggest stories. And it only gets crazier from here. This newest wave of drama kicked off in the summer of 2026, right after Kevin Durant compared the newly built Philadelphia 76ers lineup to those legendary Golden State teams he won rings with. That revamped Sixers squad featuring LeBron James, Joel Embiid, Jaylen Brown, and Tyrese Maxey was already driving massive league buzz before Durant even said a word. But the moment Durant compared them to the back-to-back champion Warriors, the internet completely melted down. Basketball fans instantly split into two groups. Some argued that a lineup stacked with 4 true superstars in their absolute prime could easily match up with any historical squad, including the Warriors dynasty. Others pushed back incredibly hard, pointing out that no paper roster can ever compare to a real team that proved its worth through years of chemistry, sacrifice, and title runs. It was the exact kind of debate hoops fans live for, but nobody expected this to turn into something so deeply personal. What really took things to the next level was not the comparison itself, but how Durant chose to defend it, breaking down individual stats as the debate grew louder, comparing scoring statistics, career accolades, and paper talent between both teams. From the outside, it just looked like a standard film breakdown from a guy who has always judged players strictly by their skills. But plenty of passionate fans and former teammates felt that, while making his case, Durant completely downplayed the impact of the exact guys who helped him win those 2 championships in Golden State. He basically reduced Klay Thompson and Draymond Green to side characters in his argument. They were treated like players whose worth is only measured by box scores, instead of what they truly brought to those title runs. That changed everything. The debate was no longer about simple basketball strategies and quickly became about respect, loyalty, and whether Durant actually valued the guys who shared the court with him during his absolute prime. Naturally, Klay Thompson was among the first former teammates dragged into this mess. Klay has built a solid reputation over the years as a super laid-back star who rarely gets into internet drama, usually just letting his play on the court do the talking. But this was different. When people started acting like those historic Warriors championship teams were nothing more than a collection of awards and stats, Klay felt he had to speak. He stood up for everything that Golden State dynasty accomplished, reminding the world those trophies were not won on raw talent alone. They won because of a chemistry that took years to develop, sacrifices players made for the greater good of the squad, and an ultimate level of trust you just cannot measure with box scores. Klay did not yell or act aggressive, but his words hit hard because they came from a guy who almost never gets involved in drama. All through his career, instead, he let his legendary jump shot do the talking, actively avoiding any unnecessary controversy, even during the wildest and most chaotic moments of his run in Golden State. So when he actually spoke out, even just a little, showing exactly how much this specific claim bothered him and likely annoyed other members of that historic dynasty who chose to remain silent. His message carried a quiet authority that made it impossible to write off as a simple overreaction. He was not looking to start a beef or throw shade at his former teammate. His goal was simply to remind the basketball world that winning titles takes far more than individual talent. When Klay actually speaks, the league listens, and his message this time was crystal clear. Those championship runs meant far more than any spreadsheet could ever capture, and boiling them down to a simple stat comparison ignores the years of shared sacrifice that fans on the outside rarely get to see. Then came Draymond Green, and this is exactly where the controversy truly exploded. Draymond has never been shy about voicing his opinion, and he wasted absolutely no time inserting himself into this heated conversation, firing off a rapid-fire string of posts on threads that immediately caught fire across the entire platform. He defended the Warriors dynasty with the same relentless intensity he once brought to the basketball court, directly challenging Kevin Durant's comparison and reigniting a rivalry between the two that basketball fans have closely followed for years. But Draymond did not stop at basketball. He also brought up Kevin Durant's long, complicated history with anonymous online burner accounts, using it as perfect ammunition to mock the situation, turning the disagreement into one of the most viral exchanges of the entire NBA offseason. Draymond framed the entire situation as yet another classic example of Kevin Durant, stirring up unnecessary drama on social media rather than simply letting his incredible game and his legacy speak for themselves. He did not need to use direct quotes or flashy, dramatic sound bites to make his point land. His reaction alone was more than enough to send the story trending across every major sports platform within hours. What made Draymond's involvement so incredibly significant is the deep history he shares with Kevin Durant, a history stretching back long before either of them left Golden State. The two have never fully seen eye to eye, even during their highly successful championship years together. And their relationship has been publicly tested more than once since Kevin Durant's departure. So, when this new controversy surfaced, it was not just another basketball disagreement. It was simply the latest flashpoint in an intense rivalry that basketball fans have closely tracked for years. One filled with subtle jabs, passionate interviews, and moments where both superstar players seem absolutely determined to have the last word. Draymond's platform gives him a highly unique advantage in these specific situations. As both an active voice in national media and a former teammate with first-hand knowledge of what it actually took to win those titles, his unique perspective carries a credibility that few others in this conversation could ever match. And that combination of insider knowledge and public visibility is exactly why his fiery reaction spread as fast as it did, turning what could have been a passing social media moment into a full-blown national sports story within a single news cycle. So, why exactly did Draymond disagree so strongly with Kevin Durant's basketball argument? To truly understand that, you have to understand how differently these two star players view team success. Draymond acknowledged that Kevin Durant evaluates basketball games primarily through the narrow lens of elite individual scoring ability. And to be fair, that perspective is not unreasonable coming from one of the most gifted scorers the league has ever seen. But Draymond argued that simply comparing the current 76ers roster to those championship Golden State Warriors, based purely on individual talent, completely overlooked everything that actually made them historically dominant. He pointed to chemistry developed over multiple grueling seasons, defensive versatility that allowed the Warriors to adjust to any style of play, veteran experience in high-pressure moments, and, most importantly, the highly unique balance between Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and the rest of the roster around them. For Draymond, reducing all of that down to a simple stat comparison was not just inaccurate, it was disrespectful to everything the team had built together. He made it crystal clear that he believed Kevin Durant was oversimplifying one of the most complex championship dynasties in modern NBA history. To really understand why this sudden controversy hit as hard as it did, you have to look back at the deeper history between Kevin Durant and his former Warriors teammates. Kevin Durant joined Golden State back in 2016 after leaving Oklahoma City, a massive move that shocked the basketball world at the time and instantly made the Warriors the most dominant team in the league. Over the next 3 seasons, Kevin Durant won 2 championships and 2 Finals MVP awards, cementing himself as one of the greatest scorers to ever step on the court. But in 2019, he left for Brooklyn, and that departure came with its own share of tension, intense speculation, and unresolved feelings among his former teammates. Years have passed since then, but public disagreements between Kevin Durant and members of the Warriors organization have repeatedly resurfaced. This latest controversy does not feel like an isolated disagreement. It feels like another chapter in a long story that never actually got real closure, one that keeps getting reopened every time Kevin Durant and his former teammates find themselves in the same conversation. Even before this latest dispute happened, a foundation was already laid for this kind of backlash, stretching back to the 2026 NBA All-Star Weekend. During that weekend, screenshots from an alleged anonymous social media account, one that many fans online believe belonged to Kevin Durant, began circulating wildly across the internet. What made this specific incident stand out from previous ones? Burner account controversies was the actual nature of the content. In the past, these situations usually centered around Durant defending himself from critics with a secret profile. But this time around, the leaked post directly criticized several active NBA players and his own former teammates. That change instantly sent the media coverage into absolute overdrive. To be absolutely clear, the internet widely alleged this profile belonged to Durant, and the storm that followed focused entirely on those accusations and the massive debate they triggered, not on any official admission. Still, the timing could not have been any worse. All-Star Weekend is usually a fun celebration where the biggest names in basketball gather under one roof. It is a rare moment where bitter rivalries are paused, allowing players to enjoy hanging out away from the grueling regular season. Instead, that festive mood was totally ruined by screenshots flying through private group chats while talking heads dissected every line to figure out exactly who those posts were targeting. Rumors ran wild about which players were actually being targeted, and even guys who were not named got dragged into the drama, simply because they had played with Durant at some point in their careers. The drama did not need confirmation to blow up. In today's NBA media world, simple rumors are often enough to rewrite a superstar's entire narrative. And that is exactly what went down here. With so many elite stars gathered in one city for All-Star Weekend when those screenshots first leaked, the story instantly hijacked the narrative for the weekend. Instead of fans and players focusing solely on the skills competitions and the exhibition game, every conversation kept looping back to those posts and how they affected relationships. Several players looked visibly annoyed by the non-stop drama, while basketball analysts spent hours debating a much deeper issue. Could anonymous online criticism from a veteran superstar cause real friction inside locker rooms, even on teams that had absolutely nothing to do with the situation? That question lingered long after All-Star Weekend wrapped up, and it set the stage for the massive controversy that would eventually blow up months down the road. Draymond Green, of course, had plenty to say about the burner mess when it first broke. He called out the awkward spot it put Durant in, especially if teammates truly believed those posts were actually from him. Rebuilding trust in that locker room would be almost impossible. Draymond stressed how vital accountability is the second teammate drama goes public, arguing that dodging tough conversations only lets speculation and bitterness rot a team. For Draymond, it was not just about what may or may not have been written. It was about how these things get handled once they are out in the open. And he made it clear that silence and dodging the issue was never the answer. Meanwhile, his tense situation with the Houston Rockets added yet another highly complicated layer to the story. Following a disappointing end to the Rockets season, reports began surfacing about real friction between Durant and some of his younger teammates. Meanwhile, discussions shifted toward big questions about leadership, accountability, and rising frustration within the franchise. Those stories only fed into the growing belief that Durant had become one of the most polarizing older stars in the entire league. It was no longer just about winning. It was about whether his leadership style was actually helping or hurting a young Rockets core still trying to build its own identity. Several younger Rockets players reportedly vented their frustration over a lack of accountability after tough losses during the year, while media analysts pointed to major disagreements over communication inside the locker room. These issues sparked even more public debate over Durant's overall influence on the roster and whether his style could ever really gel with young players just starting their careers. Combined with everything else playing out in public, it painted a picture of a veteran superstar struggling not just on the floor, but in his personal relationships, both past and present. Look, leadership friction between aging superstars and young rosters is certainly nothing new in basketball, but the timing of this made it feel incredibly significant. Durant landed in Houston with deep championship experience and a career resume few active players could ever match. There was a massive expectation that his sheer presence would instantly speed up the growth of the team's younger core. But when the actual on-court results fell short of those hopes, questions about locker room chemistry became almost inevitable. Several analysts pointed to Durant's notoriously high standards, the very same demands that turned him into one of the most prolific scorers in league history, arguing they might not translate smoothly to younger players still finding their footing in the pros. Others argued this rumored friction was just a standard phase for a young squad, learning to play alongside an established veteran, claiming that media narratives were blowing normal growing pains completely out of proportion. Either way, having these rumors surface right during the peak of the Warriors' drama only poured gasoline on an already raging fire. Reactions from opposing players added yet another layer to the story. Competitors across the NBA started calling out Durant's relentless drive, his behavior on the court, and his fiery interactions during intense, high-stakes matchups all season long. Whether meant as criticism or just observation, these comments only reinforced the idea that Durant was becoming a deeply polarizing figure across the league. A few of those reactions came from guys who had battled Durant in high-stakes games, leaving them with very strong opinions on his intensity, while others were simply rival players watching the entire drama unfold from afar and offering their thoughts from a safe distance. What really stood out was how incredibly consistent this feeling seemed to be across all corners of the league. Even players with absolutely zero ties to the legendary Warriors dynasty or the Rockets locker room got sucked into the debate, offering their own takes on what it really means to play with or against a competitor like Durant. Combine those intense on-court reactions with the ongoing social media drama, and you get an off-season narrative surrounding Durant that went way beyond anything happening on an actual basketball court. It was suddenly about relationships, reputation, and how one of the greatest scorers ever was viewed by the exact players sharing the floor with him. So why did Durant make that original comparison between the 76ers and the Warriors in the first place? To truly get that, you have to understand how Durant has always evaluated the game of basketball. Throughout his career, Durant has always looked at the game through the lens of pure talent and elite scoring ability. He often judges teams by the actual caliber of their roster rather than team chemistry or past milestones. Honestly, that is not an unfair way to evaluate basketball, especially coming from someone who has spent his whole career being one of the most efficient scorers the game has ever seen. Many fans strongly disagreed with his final conclusion about the 76ers matching up with the Warriors, but others argued he was just giving a straight-up, honest basketball opinion, one that only blew up because it involved his former championship teammates. Which brings us to a much bigger question. Why did so many current and former players react so intensely to what was really just one guy's basketball opinion? The answer is that championship success is deeply personal for the actual athletes who have to live through it. A lot of players felt Durant's comments downplayed the massive collective effort it takes to build a real dynasty. High-level basketball requires way more than star power. It relies on role players sacrificing their stats for the good of the team, defensive specialists who rarely get any credit, and chemistry built over years of shared battle, and trust forged through endless hours together on and off the court. Any comparison based strictly on individual accolades and scoring stats is bound to feel dismissive to players who sacrifice personal glory for team success, which is exactly why this specific drama struck such a massive nerve with his former teammates. Social media blew up every single stage of this drama, making it almost impossible to escape. Every new podcast touched on it. Every single interview brought it up. Each social post added another layer, and every debate show generated more drama as fans endlessly dissected each reaction for hidden meaning. What could have been a passing basketball opinion in a different era of media coverage instead exploded into the biggest NBA storyline of the entire offseason, largely because every single response created a brand new headline and another trending topic, along with another wave of intense reactions from players across the league. Let us take a step back and connect this entire timeline. Because when you map this out from beginning to end, you realize exactly how fast a simple basketball comparison exploded into one of the biggest public feuds the NBA has seen in years. It all kicked off when Durant compared the new-look 76ers roster to his old championship Warriors squads. Things escalated quickly when Durant broke down the roster individually, seeming to downplay what Klay Thompson and Draymond Green actually contributed. Klay responded first, calmly standing up for the legacy of that Golden State dynasty. Then Draymond stepped in with a much more aggressive public call-out, taking a direct shot at Durant's history with anonymous online accounts. That jab pointed straight back to the alleged burner account drama from All-Star Weekend earlier that year, a situation that had already created serious tension across the league before this new dispute even began. Then, reports of friction inside the Houston Rockets locker room added another tense layer. Next came reactions from rival players who openly questioned Durant's on-court attitude and his competitiveness throughout the season. Every single piece of this puzzle connects directly to the next. It builds a single messy narrative about a superstar whose relationships across the league have become incredibly strained over the years. Bringing it all together, it is worth remembering how much ground this story covers. It started with that simple comparison involving those championship-winning Golden State Warriors and the newly constructed 76ers roster. That take instantly triggered backlash from fans who felt Durant completely ignored the power of team chemistry. It drew sharp public pushback from Klay Thompson and especially from Draymond Green. Both guys stepped up to defend the legacy of the dynasty they helped build, putting the spotlight right back on those alleged burner accounts from All-Star Weekend. That drama had already raised serious questions about how Durant gets along with other players across the league. It fed straight into ongoing discussions about Durant's leadership in Houston and his rumored friction with younger teammates. Ultimately, it only fueled the belief that his relationships with other players in the league, both past and present, have grown incredibly complicated as his career continues to play out. What makes this saga so fascinating is how it highlights the modern dynamic between athletes and the social platforms they use to speak their minds. A generation ago, a comparison like the one Durant made between the 76ers and the Warriors would have stayed confined to a single post-game interview, quickly forgotten the second a new storyline popped up. Today, that exact same comment spreads instantly, getting clipped, quoted, and picked apart by millions of people within minutes, taking on a massive life of its own long after the original context is lost. Durant, more than almost any other superstar in basketball, has always been willing to clash directly with fans and haters online, a habit that connects him deeply with his audience but also lands him dead center in the middle of constant controversy. This latest drama is just the newest example of that exact pattern playing out on a massive scale, reminding everyone just how fast a simple basketball opinion can explode into a massive public feud involving some of the most respected names the game has ever seen. No matter where you stand on Durant's actual opinions, this entire drama proves something undeniable about the modern NBA. A comment from one of the league's biggest stars can instantly reignite old rivalries, twist public perception, and completely dominate the national basketball conversation in a matter of days. Whether Durant wanted to trigger this level of blowback or not, the reactions from Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and plenty of others made it obvious that his voice still carries immense weight. Love him or hate him, the intense debates surrounding Durant's legacy are far from over, and they probably never will be settled. But this latest beef has already earned its spot as another unforgettable chapter in the messy, complicated, and unfinished story between Kevin Durant, his former teammates, and the modern NBA. As the offseason rolls on and training camps get closer, everyone is watching to see how these fractured relationships evolve. Whether those bridges get rebuilt, or whether the massive distance between Durant and the guys who once stood beside him just keeps growing. One thing is absolutely certain: this will not be the last time Kevin Durant finds himself right at the center of NBA headlines. And it definitely won't be the last time his former teammates have a lot to say about it. For now, the entire basketball world just watches and waits, wondering if the next chapter of this story will actually bring some sort of closure, or if it will just add another complicated layer to a bitter rivalry that has no real end in sight.